Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As the brother chairman here explained, my purpose here is not to really inject my own ideas, but to primarily discuss and to elaborate and to possibly accentuate what the other speakers have said. So I didn't have to prepare for this purpose. But what I did write a few questions, and I think these questions or points might be relevant to you, because what I would like you to do is to place yourself when you were listening to speakers or when I elaborate on what they have said or discuss what they have said. Anything that you find requires some action on your part, you begin to think, what do I do to achieve that goal? Anything that you feel is not clear to you, what do I do to achieve that goal? So in that sense, I would like you to be all involved. As the last speaker says, let us be involved. Let us see how you can make things better compared to what you may find are deficiencies. Essentially, what I have here is 6 points, but 3 related to what I call analysis, and that is in the form of questions. What is the meaning of agenda for the Muslims? Almost every speaker talked about the agenda for the Muslims. But to my mind, I'm not sure at this time that whether or not we really have a clear picture, and perhaps we have to work further on it. What is this agenda? What are the various parts of this agenda? And I will highlight some parts that various speakers have identified. How do these parts relate to achieving the desired goals? Which means we must be able to put them together if they stand in isolated ways. And then, of course, the more important process of synthesis. After having talked and discussed and learned everything that we need to do, how do we go about doing it? And in that regard, identify the parts that appear feasible with a view to available resources, and perhaps more important, our ability to undertake them. Number 2, in synthesis, arrange the parts in some order of priority. And number 3, specify and organize the part in sufficient details, because this is something that I don't think this conference itself will achieve that goal. We all have to work on providing the sufficient details or necessary details to embark on this task of achieving the agenda. Beginning with our chairman, he said that this session, this conference is an opening a window into the future. And essentially what we are all doing or trying to do, joining hands with the speaker and joining minds with the speaker, is gazing through the window to the future. And the question that comes or should come to our mind, do we see something through that window? And if we see something, is it blurred? And can we unblur it enough so that we can see what is to be achieved? Beginning with our first speaker here, and as I comment or discuss the points raised by the speaker, I would like to, of course, state that if it turns out that the speaker gave you a message that was clearer than what I'm trying to do, please forgive me. I'll ask forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because at some time I may have to do rephrasing. And secondly, there were certain points common from speaker to speaker. So it is possible that in the beginning I may mention the name of a speaker and several points, and as I go down I may have few points. This does not imply that that speaker had very little to say, but perhaps that speaker was joining hands with the speakers who discussed earlier, although he spoke from his perspective. Sister Amina made several points in this case, and of course some points relate to the agenda. And in terms of, she said very clearly, and I think it's important, not to be involved in anything that permits the continuation of wrongdoing. We have to be very careful. Be involved, but make sure that you do not permit or condone or perpetuate the wrongdoing that you see around you. She also said, as other speakers said, that we have to find out what is the correct action, or the word here in this conference is agenda for Allah, or agenda of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, she said that we have opportunity to institute change. The challenge, of course, to us is, are we going to exploit or to make use of those opportunities to bring about the change? In terms of parts that will constitute this agenda. She referred to the need to educate ourselves. And in that regard, she says perhaps we need to have workshops on public speaking, on media, on voter registration, and so on. So a variety of forms of education. We need to see, in fact, how we can be instrumental in removing the misunderstanding. So one important part of our agenda is to remove the misunderstanding. And she gave her own example of a talk she gave on various punishments according to Islamic Sharia. And when she began the talk, there was a lot of misunderstanding, and at the end, there was a much clearer understanding. And I have, in fact, I shared that sentiment with her. We found there are things that for the audience at large are very difficult to understand, but we should not deviate from the truth. And if you speak with truth and you speak clearly enough, you will find the audience, beginning with the hostility, later on would have much better understanding of your message, in a sense, rather than trying to compromise or dilute your message. As we embark on this process of articulation or clarifying what this message is, it cannot be done without understanding. And of course, it must be done in a way that avoids any, what you call, compromises of what the message is. She says, of course, and as other speakers said, that people are suffering from a malaise. The society at large is suffering from a malaise. And we, in fact, can be instrumental in removing their suffering. And of course, this is incumbent. This message was shared by not only she said it, but every speaker repeatedly referred to the Quranic verses where it talks about the maruf and munkar. And it is our role to amplify the maruf and to inhibit the munkar. When we see something good, we must participate in amplifying it. When we see something wrong or bad, we must participate in inhibiting it, in a sense. She said, another speaker said it too, in fact, Brother Qutbi al-Mahdi, as I'll refer to later on, referred to Sayyid Qutb saying, and she said that we need not be introvert. In fact, it is very clear, because of our being Khalifatullah, we have to be extroverts, which means it is not enough for us that I understand Islam and I practice it, but Islam must emanate from us, from all of us. So in that sense, we must participate in bringing this message of Islam to others, and of course, find opportunity. She says we must attract people to Islam through articulation about what Islam is, and we should embark on a process of reversion of the problems, or reversion to proper solutions to the problems that exist in the society. And of course, there are choices to be made, and we cannot do all of it at the same time, at the same point in time, in the same place, and we have to look at choices. Going on to Brother Ghaith Noor Kashif, he commented, of course, the role of this conference, that it fulfills a great need, and we all share that sentiment, and we hope that we will be instrumental in bettering the American way of life, inshallah. He referred to the life of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the holistic mission that he had. And this holistic mission included the political aspects of the society, the social aspects of the society, and the moral underpinnings of the society. So he did not focus on the moral underpinnings alone, but he took the entire spectrum and in fact dealt with it. And he said also, of course, that we cannot be, this message is coming out in different words, that Muslims cannot be isolationist, either isolationist in terms of confining the message to only certain values, only moral values, or isolationist in terms of confining certain things to our own self. And he said, another said, the society is in a chaos, and of course we need to focus on the processes that will evolve this agenda into a workable frame. He said that if we do not try to understand what others are planning for the future for us, then we will forfeit the right to our own future. And I hope you will share that sentiment that we have to be aware and alert. And he also referred to, of course, the need to be proactive and reactive. Perhaps if I can substitute a word, we need to be a proactive. We have to have our own agenda. Regardless of what others are doing to us, we have to know what we have to do to our own self and to others. But then, of course, we have to understand what others are trying to do to us or may do to us. And I would say we have to be responsive to that, and we have to plan. And he, in fact, referred to the affair of Salman Rushdie that we all know. And our focus should be not to simply say, we are going to respond to Salman Rushdie, but how are we going to respond to the likes of Salman Rushdie that will appear in the future? And they will appear as a challenge to us, in a sense. And he, of course, indicated the need of balancing, of creating a balance in our communities and in our affairs, creating a balance among the haves and the have-nots, whether this is academically, professionally, or in terms of financially. Of course, this is incumbent upon us as being Muslims that we must create this balance. And of course, the need to mobilize. We can sit down and talk and discuss and whatever it is, but unless we go out and say, yes, I have a mission, I want to accomplish something, and you become, in fact, part of bringing about the change, this mobility. And he indicated the need of mobilizing you yourself as an individual. You say, I cannot work with anybody else. Mobilize yourself individually, but then you must go out and mobilize yourself collectively. Coming now to Brother Qutbi al-Mahdi, in fact, he said, again, emphasize the need to identify the Allah's agenda, and he indicated very clearly that we must avoid compromises. And he says we must participate. We don't have a choice. We have to participate. And he referred to, as I said, Sayyid Qutb saying, and his understanding of that word or that phrase. But he said that this participation must lead to our own enrichment and to the enrichment of others, and not to our deprivation, which means we should not try to participate and deprive ourselves of a system of the message of Islam in its holistic sense. He then raised a challenge, being, of course, in the position that he was, being among the persons who knows the Islamic Society of North America from within. He said it is a challenge that society such as Islamic Society of North America must bring the diverse groups together. Whether that diversity exists in terms of our professionalism, some of us are doctors, some of us are engineers, or that diversity exists because we come from different backgrounds, we have different perspectives. Remember, we are human beings. Every one of us is different. We may all look at things somewhat differently. And as soon as somebody looks at something differently from us, we should not say, he's out. No, we must bring ourselves together in a sense, and we must, this ISNA can play that great role. He said we have a role to play in the terms of the quality of life for this society at large, but he also brought the point that this understanding, this agenda must also emanate further to the international scene, whether in terms of the conflicts that exist in the world, the wars, the miseries that those wars create, the refugees, that we must be participants in that agenda. Finally, of course, the last speakers coming to it, he emphasized, of course, again, the need for Allah's agenda. But he, of course, was perhaps more than others said we have to get involved. And I may share, I hope he would allow some difference of opinion. Yes, we must become involved, but ponder and pause before we become involved so that you do not lose something in the process. But he made it very clear that our involvement must extend to political apparatus in the society, and it must extend to social apparatus of the society, whether it is a county board, the school boards in the local area, whether it is a state bodies. And he brought the point that by becoming politically involved, we will, inshallah, succeed to put some items of the message of Islam on the political platforms of some of the parties, and that may be a good achievement. And of course, he indicated the need to have alliances or to work with others. And inshallah, those are the points. Again, once again, I would like to take the blame for anything that I may have misconstrued or misstated. May Allah forgive me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.